Looking good, looking good. All right, that's preparing live stream webinar. If you have any questions for me, please put them into the chat. If you're an E2 language member in the webinar here, I'm happy to answer you. Currently, I'm live on YouTube, but usually takes a while. All right, just connecting away. Believe it or not, I think it's going to work. Just having a little hot chocolate, by the way. Why not? Why not? If you're watching this on YouTube, just bear with me. I'll get started in a second. Feel free to skip ahead by like 30 seconds to a minute, and then we should get started. Come on. Still not working. While it's doing that, just let me tell you about my experience of writing this one today. I'm going to show you there's an element of IELTS Writing Task 1 for academic that is not writing itself. It's more thinking. It's more actually understanding what you're looking at and making decisions about what you will write about. That's a really tricky aspect of this. Making decisions, especially about what you're going to compare. Okay? All right, that's all working rock and roll there. Cool. All right, let's get started then. Just bear with me. What am I doing? I'm getting my PPT slides. Excuse me. All right, that's there. That's working. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay, and I'm one of the expert IELTS teachers at E2 Language. Just before we begin, if you wouldn't mind, please, into the comments below, just put the country where you are from. I'll be interested to read all of those countries. In this live class, we're going to look at IELTS Academic Writing Task 1, and we're going to focus in on tables, which can be really, really tricky. So, on test day, you may be faced with something that looks like this. We need to turn this into 150 words. We need to try to get an IELTS 9 or thereabouts, as close as we possibly can to perfection. So what are we going to do? The first thing you need to do on test day is read the graph description, because without the description, this is kind of meaningless. You might be able to interpret something out of it, but in fact, this first sentence of the graph description will tell you what this table is about. It says, the table below shows the current packaging recycling rates and the recycling targets of various packaging materials for 3 consecutive future years. Whoa, this is a really hard one. Let's look at this first part here. What does it show? Well, it shows, first of all, number 1, the current packaging recycling rates. Here are the current packaging recycling rates. Okay, whoops, sorry about that. And the recycling targets of various packaging materials. Here's the various packaging materials. We have paper, aluminium, steel, wood, and total recycling for 3 consecutive future years. Here are the 3 consecutive future years. We'll spend a bit of time in a minute understanding what this table is representing. But this is one of the hardest things about IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 is, first of all, understanding what you're looking at. Second of all, deciding what you're going to write. It's really, really tricky. That's why we need a bit of a superstructure. Okay, the superstructure that I'm going to show you is based on the second sentence here, because this second sentence is always the same in every single IELTS Writing Task 1 that you will see. It always says, summarize the information, select and report the main features, make comparisons. These are the 3 instructions. This is what you have to do. So the superstructure is based on those 3 instructions. In essence, what you need to do is summarize, describe, and compare. Okay, this is what your task 1 will look like on test day. You're going to have a very brief summary at the top, just a single sentence, maybe 2 sentences. In the second paragraph, you're going to describe the main trends. And the third paragraph is where it really happens. That's where you compare data. I'm going to show you how to do all 3 of these. So let's look at how to summarize first. That's this sentence here. All you need to do to summarize is rewrite that description, that first sentence, rewrite that in your own words to say the exact same thing. Okay? So for example, on the left-hand side here, this is the original. This is the original here. Original. And this one is J's. Okay? So the original says the table shows, the table below. J's says the table of data. The original says shows. Mine says represent. Why represent and not represents? Because data is plural. Third sentence here, or third part rather, third phrase, the current packaging recycling rates. I said both the current rates of packaging recycling and the recycling targets, and I said and the target rates of various packaging materials. I left this out. For 3 consecutive future years, I said for 3 years, full colon, not semicolon, full colon, 2020, comma, 2021 and 2022. So my one here says the exact same thing as this because I've just written it in different words, so it's really accurate. Cool. All I've done is that. Now I want you to rewrite the task in your own words. If you're on YouTube, press pause, give yourself about 2 minutes. Make sure that it does say the exact same thing, but in different words. All right, let's have a look at the chat here. Please put your responses into the chat and I'll give you some feedback. The table represents the recycled proportion and the target rates for different types, plural, of packaging materials through 3 different periods in the future. Good. It's a real trick. This is a really hard one because you want to get the current rates and the projected future rates. So even if you write 2 sentences for this one, I think it's fine. So I would say something like the table represents the current rates of recycling for various materials and the projected future rates for 3 years. Excuse me. Good. Not bad though, Sharif. Good. Just table represents the recycled proportion of different materials and the targeted rates for different types of packaging. Not through 3 different periods in the future, for 3 different periods in the future. So there's a preposition, little preposition error there. That's okay. Let me have a look on YouTube, see what you guys are writing. Nothing yet because there's a little lag time between what I'm teaching and what you're reading. That's cool. All right, we're going to press on. We're going to press on. And we'll continue on to the description here. Cool. All right, let me just wave my hand so I know what I'm doing. Cool. Now that you've done that, let's move to the next section where we're going to describe main trends. This is different. We're not comparing, we're describing. We're describing the data generally, okay? So we're going to describe the main trends. We're not going to use any data. So we're not going to use any specific percentages, for example. If you're looking at a bar graph or a line graph, you can use the years from the x-axis. That's fine. And for the table, well, it's a bit of a trick. Let me show you what to do here. This is my paragraph. The current rates of recycling vary widely according to material. I just told you not to use percentages, didn't I? Hang on. Okay, let me go back. I'm actually going to change this. Just bear with me. This is from the line graph one, which is a bit different. Let me describe main trends. Let me start that again. There you go. There you go. You learn something new every day. Let me start again. This section. Cool. All right, let me wave my hands again. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to describe. That's what we're going to do. We're going to describe the main trends only. Now, if you have a line graph or a bar graph, try not to use any of the y-axis information. You can use the x-axis information for line graphs and bar graphs. For tables, it's a little bit different, okay? For tables, let me read you mine. I said, the current rates of recycling vary widely according to material. Wood is the least most recycled at just 21%. This is followed by aluminium, which is recycled 50% of the time. Paper is recycled 65% of the time, while steel totals 70%. In total, 68.2% of packaging is currently being recycled. Each is expected to increase slightly. All I've described there were the current rates of recycling. I have not mentioned anything about the future rates of recycling because I'm going to use that in my comparison later on. So when I talk about describing main trends, I'm just going to talk about current rates of recycling for paper, aluminium, steel, wood, and the total recycling. So here I want you to write not necessarily 7 sentences, but I want you to write definitely 7 different descriptions. First, I want you to describe the overall differences. Just give me a sentence that says, I wrote something like, percentages of recycling vary widely among the materials, okay? I want you to write something like that. In the second description, I want you to describe the current paper recycling. So it's at 65%. Remember, nothing from here. Describe the current aluminium recycling, then steel, then wood, then the total recycling, which is here, and then give an overall prediction. And what you can see here is that 65 to 70 to 71 to 72, 50 to 58 to 61 to 64, there's going to be a slight increase. So please go ahead and write one paragraph using all of these descriptions. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Please press pause, write this, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, let me have a look at the chat here. Let's see what you guys have got. Overall, the vast majority of recycled material is steel, followed by paper, aluminium, and wood, respectively. Paper comes slightly less than recycled steel by 5%. Wood is the lowest material to be recycled on average. More than half of these four materials are recycled. Good, Sharif. You'll just have to be a little bit careful with your spelling. So just your ideas are excellent. Your sentences are really quite good. But your spelling, aluminium, respectively, lowest, yeah, a few little mistakes, so just be careful. Packaging rate is different according to the type of material. Good, that's a fine opening sentence. For instance, steel is the most used material. It's not about most used, it's recycling rates. Remember to get that right. You need to know what this thing is actually describing. Considering all recyclable materials, steel is the most widely recycled material, followed by paper and aluminium, while wood is the least recycled element. The net recycling is at about 68.2%, is precisely 68.2%. Regarding targeted amounts of different, no, okay, good. So we're not going into target amounts yet. All we're doing is describing the current rates of recycling. This is our general sort of description. Then when we get into the next part, we start to compare, okay? So let's do that now. Yeah, cool. Let me just wave my hand so I know where to cut it. Cool. Let's now that you've, let me start again. Now that you've described the general current, how can I say this? It's not a trend. What are you doing? You're describing the current recycling rates. Now that you've described the current recycling rates, now we're going to move on to the next part where we're going to compare, okay? We're going to compare. Just before we do that, let me go back to where we described. The current rates of recycling vary widely according to material. Wood is the least most recycled at just 21%. This is followed by aluminium, which is recycled 50% of the time. Paper is recycled 65% of the time, while steel totals 70%. In total, 68.2% of packaging is currently being recycled. Each is expected to increase slightly. All I did was describe that. I didn't get into the future targets because now I'm going to compare. But the question is, what am I going to compare? Because I need to choose categories to compare. And I have to include detailed, precise percentage information. So when I look at this, I ask myself, which categories am I going to compare? And I have two choices. Number one, I can compare material types like paper versus steel, for example. I can compare those. Or number two, I can compare one material and I can compare the current rates versus the future targets. Let me explain what I mean there because it's quite complex. I can compare paper versus steel and say, well, paper is 65%, steel is 70%, and this is projected to be here, well, this is going to go up by 8%. This is going to be 71, this is going to be 80%. That's not a good idea. That's going to be complicated. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one material, like paper, and I'm going to compare the current rates versus the future targets. So I'm going to say paper is currently 65%. It's predicted to grow by 5% by 2020. Then it's predicted to grow by 1% each year to 2022. In my next sentence, I'm going to talk about aluminium is predicted to increase by 8%. Recycling rates will increase by 8%. And thereafter, they will increase by 3% each year. Then I'll talk about steel. And I'll say the same thing. It's also predicted to increase by 8% by 2020. Then it will increase by 2% year on year to 2022. You can see that this is a much easier way to compare. That decision about what you're going to compare is a really important decision to make because it can cost you your IELTS writing. If you compare the wrong things, your writing's going to be weird and it's going to not be logical. It's not going to be right. If you choose the right things to compare, Your sentences are going to be logical, it's going to be well structured, and the IELTS examiner is going to be happy. And that's what we want. Cool. So we're going to compare, in short, we're going to compare current versus future targets. Cool. So let's do that. I'll read you mine. Mine says, comparing current trends to future trends, comma, paper recycling is predicted to increase by 5% in 2020 to reach 70% and then increase by 1% thereafter over the 3 years. Aluminium recycling is expected to increase from 50 to 58% over the next 3 years and then continue modestly by 3% each year. Similar to aluminium, steel recycling will increase by a predicted 8%, but then increase year on year by just 2%. Wood will have the least highest increase from its current rates, rising by just 4% over the next few years, where it will then increase by a more significant 3% to 2022. Probably should be by 2022, sorry. This is that's probably the wrong preposition there. Let me change that to by 2022. Overall, the total amount of packaging to be recycled will climb from its current rate of 68.2% to 75.4% in 2022. Cool, fine. I've made one mistake of a preposition. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to compare paper recycling, current rates versus future rates, targets. I want you to compare aluminium recycling, current rates versus future targets, steel, wood, and then finally, your fifth sentence, compare total recycling. I don't know why I've written that twice. That's an error. Compare total recycling, current rates versus future targets. I'll give you 5 minutes, pause the video, and then come back. By the way, if you're on YouTube, feel free to write your sentences into the comments below. Cool. Let me have a look at the chat, see how you guys are going there. Whoops, what's going on here? My thing. All right, good, Sharif. Comparatively, the highest prediction is for aluminium and steel, which will be recycled increasingly by 14 and 12% respectively, unlike paper, which will moderately increase through the period by 5% only. It looks as though that paper recycling is following the same trend of total recycling process. Wood is predicted to increase by 10% in 2022. However, in 2020, wood has the lowest increase. Good. Again, Sharif, that's good. That's fine. I think you've made it difficult for yourself, though. I would have just done paper, aluminium, steel, wood, total recycling. Instead of, you've compared between the different materials, which I think is the more difficult challenge to take up. The easier challenge and the way to structure your writing more logically would be to say paper is here currently, paper will be here in 2020, 2021, 2022, and make those comparisons. So you're comparing current recycling rates for paper versus future recycling rates for paper. That would be a hell of a lot more easy, I reckon, hell of a lot easier. Considering all recyclable materials, steel is the most widely recycled material, followed, that was from before, that's fine. Regarded target amounts of different recycling materials in the future, it is predicted that each element would be recycled with increased rates than previous years. Fine. Paper is expected to reach from 65% to 70% by 2020. Okay, I did ignore that. Thank you, Kushbu. Latifa, if I put the percentage, do I have to put for each one the year? Let me show you what I mean here. So, for example, you would say, all right, let's look at paper. Or let's say we choose wood because wood's the lowest, okay? So we start with wood, fine. We'll start with the lowest one, and it's going to rise by 4%. So we'd say wood, the current rates of recycling for wood are 21%. These rates are expected to increase by how much? What's 25 minus 21? By 4% by 2020. And these will further increase or rise or climb by 3% each year until 2022. This is how you should write it. Keep it simple. The decision about what you compare is so critical because it could be the difference between a good score and a bad score, depending on what you choose to compare. Let's have a look at aluminium, just as an example. So the current rate of recycling of aluminium is 50%. This is predicted to increase to 58% by 2020 and will increase incrementally by 3% each year until 2022. You can see how easy it is to compare this, to write about that. Cool. I'll give you another couple of minutes. I want you to do it again. For those of you on YouTube, I'm talking to the paid IELTS E2 language members in the webinar. I am looking at your chat, Abhishek and Abishkar and Javid Khan, but unfortunately I'm talking to the paid members here. All right, let's have a look at that chat again here in the webinar chat, I should say. All right, let's have a look at Kushbu's one again. Regarding targeted amounts of different recycling materials in the future, it is predicted that each element would be recycled with increased rates than previous years. Paper is expected to not reach from, you reach a target number. So to reach 75%, so not reach from, never reach from, reach 70% by 2020 and just a single percent rise thereafter until 2022. Excellent. On the other hand, don't use on the other hand. It's not an academic phrase. Some people say it is, but I think it's not. I think it's a conversational phrase. So you can say in contrast or comparatively or similarly if it's similar, but not on the other hand. Good though, Kushbu, it's looking good. On the other hand, aluminium is predicted to be recycled at 8% incrementally and then with a 3% rise each year until 2022. Steel is also assumed to achieve its target by an 8% rise and then a 2% increments every year by, okay, Kushbu, yours is good. You've definitely got the idea here right. However, your sentences are ungrammatical. There's some really fundamental errors happening there, which is going to reduce your score quite significantly. You really have to get those cleaned up. I suggest feedback for that one. Latifa, comparing the current rate versus future rate, paper will increase steadily from 65% to 70% by 2020, and then will increase regularly by 1% until 2022. Good. Yours tended to have an emphasis on time there. Steady, regular. These are time adverbs. It's okay. It's okay. That's fine. That's fine. Good. Good. All right, let's push on. Oh, you're looking at me. Cool. All right, now that we've compared the different recycling rates of each material, we would have written something like this, which I just read you. So ultimately, this is what we're going to build. So let's recap what we've learned in this lesson. We've learned that we have to do 3 things in IELTS Writing Task 1. First, we need to summarize the table. Then we need to describe the main trends. Then we need to compare categories. But I think probably the hardest thing you have to do is make the decision about what you will compare. Because if you make the wrong decision, it's going to make your life a lot more difficult. If you make the right decision, it makes your life a lot easier because you would just be able to write simpler, clearer, cleaner sentences. Cool? So think about that. That requires practice. So ultimately, this is what you will write on your test paper. This is what it should look like. You can see distinctly what we have here. We have the summary. We have the description. Then we have the comparison. So this is the general trends. This is just the task description that we rewrote. We rewrote that task description, and this one was the data. So we compared the data and we had to make decisions about that. That's probably the hardest one to write there. What's going on? Whoops, and there it dies. Let me bring it back. Cool. All right. If you're on YouTube, you're watching this, you need some help with your IELTS, check out this website here, e2language.com. We offer all sorts of stuff to help you out, including one-on-one tutorials, writing feedback, speaking feedback, heaps of practice, live mock tests, pronunciation apps, study plan consultations, grammar lessons, vocabulary building lists, everything you need to make your English language fantastic. We have it. So check out that website and sign up for an account. Right now, though, I'm going to answer some questions. So if you have any questions, put them into the chat. In the meantime, check that out. Cool. What have we got? All right. Yeah, okay. So Sharif saying that he's got an issue with selecting the main features or what to compare. It's really just become apparent to me that how important this is, especially with tables. I think with line graphs and bar graphs and pie charts, it's pretty easy to think about what you will compare. But with a table, it's like, whoa, what am I going to compare? It's a more difficult task. So hopefully you won't see a table, Sharif, but do practice it. You can go to Google, search on Google for tables of data and just start to read them and understand them. It's not really easy to find them though. Latifa, it was another question and we have to compare about country names. Do I have to keep them in capitals all? Yes, country names should always have a capital letter. Okay, absolutely. Cool, let me just check my YouTube chat. Some people were saying that this might not be live. I can tell you that it is. All right. Okay, it looks like there's a bit of a fight going on YouTube chat. That's cool. No problem. All right, I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. Oh, wait, I've got Kushbu. One more question. I'm facing problem with selecting sentences which are grammatically correct while I'm writing in a hurry. Yeah, Kushbu, I'd say the key, look, IELTS Writing Task 1, you're better off to write simpler sentences. Don't get too complex. That might be the key to your problem there. Instead of writing a long, complex sentence with like connective devices and which and that, forget that. Just write simple, short sentences. Maybe connect one or two to make a complex sentence here or there, and that would be a much better thing to do. Anyway, hope that was helpful. Yep, I hope all's going well. If you need any help, check us out. Otherwise, keep practicing. You guys will get there, and I will see you soon, okay?